So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel Ruivo, and I'm a software engineer at Present Technologies. More specifically, I'm a mobile developer. And in first place, I would like to thank you all for joining me today for this session about how Flutter is revolutionizing the mobile cross-platform development. So first, I would like to make a question. Does anyone here ever played with Flutter or worked with Flutter before? OK, I see two guys over there. That's nice. More than I expected, actually, which is great. So this is you here, probably still having your lunch or drinking some coffee and thinking to yourself, this guy over here is just about to show me another promising framework that is going to be better than the other already available in the market. And indeed, I will try to do so, but if by the end of these 15 minutes you are as convinced as I am that Flutter is indeed the best option currently on the market for cross-platform development, then my mission here is accomplished. So let's start, for those more unfamiliar with the different mobile app development approaches. I lost my picture. Oh, OK, there it is. For those more unfamiliar with these different approaches, those can be related with its cost against its user experience. So in the bottom, with the shortest cost, but also with the more and pleasurable experience, we have the web apps, which, of course, as the name suggests, are made to run mainly on a web browser. So as long as you have a browser, you should be fine to run the app, of course, also in your mobile phone. Then we have the hybrid ones, such as Ionic and PhoneGap. These apps ship to the App Store and Play Store. Typically, you use web languages such as JavaScript, and you are really dependent from wrappers to call native components. And those wrappers have a huge impact on performance. Of course, it's better than web and also offers a better user experience. And probably the most known one, the native, where you use the native SDKs for both Android and iOS, and their environments as well. And here, you have the best experience because you have no limitations or whatsoever for creating the apps. But this comes with a great cost. You have two separated teams, one for each platform, typically, and you have to duplicate the business logic, the UI, and if you need to add a new feature, you have to add it as well in those two platforms. So this can be avoidable, and Flutter aims to solve this by giving you a native performance with more or less an hybrid cost. I would say that's even better than those listed over there. So this is Flutter, the Google's framework for creating cross-platform apps. In a glance, this is what you can achieve over Flutter, reactive apps, very responsive, with a lot of animations. And because we had already from the biggies, such as Facebook and Microsoft, we now have the Google one, because the best comes at last, they say. So Flutter actually ships with a lot of great features, such as compiling native to native and rendering at 60 frames per second, one language for all, which is Dart, a lot of available plugins maintained by Google engineers and also for the community, support for tests out of the box, support for multiple tools, native apps for not only Android and iOS, but other platforms, as we are going to see in a while, and also allows you to write native code if needed. So because we don't have much time, I will try to cover its best highlights, starting by its architecture. If you have ever heard about Flutter, you've probably heard about this concept as well, widgets. So everything you see rendered on a screen of a Flutter app is called a widget. And those widgets build just like Lego pieces, and in the end, you have as a whole your widget tree, which is everything that you see on the screen. So a simple architecture overview can give you an idea of what Flutter is. So basically, Flutter picks your source code, which is in Dart, along with the framework code, which is Dart as well, and renders it on the screen using OpenGL and Skia graphics, just like a game engine does. So when you have a game, it renders everything on the screen using OpenGL, for example. And this gives you the opportunity and the freedom to create a lot of things that you otherwise wouldn't. So, such as looking the same regardless of the platform system versions. Remember those support libraries in Android? Here, you are free to create UIs that can be the same across all API versions. On the left, we have a Pixel 2 device, which is running API 28. And on the right, we have a Nexus S, which is running API 16, the lowest supported by Flutter. And those devices are 8 years apart from each other. So you can see here that they are running the exactly same app, and you don't need to worry about adding support libraries. Of course, that in most use cases, you'll want to use the platform user. You want to use platform widgets, so you can keep the platform guidelines as for the user interface, such as using material components on the Android, and also Cupertino on iOS. Flutter also ships out of the box with those widgets. You don't need to worry. And also has platform-aware widgets, which are widgets that, regarding the platform where they are running on, they will have either a material design or a Cupertino design. So we've heard that Flutter uses Dart as its main language, but what kind of sorcery is this? What is Dart, actually? Does anyone here, aside Flutter, knows Dart as a language? OK, more than Flutter, actually, because there are a lot of people that start to know Dart after Flutter. And Dart, even though they are not very well known, it's a language that has been being used by Google internally for some time in products such as AdWords. So there's 3 keywords that can define. First of it is the productivity. For example, Dart is a very easy to learn, very language to learn as oriented programming language. If you are used to JavaScript, C#, Swift, for example, you'll find very easy to jump in. Also, efficiency. It's one of the fewer mainstream languages that supports compiling both ahead of time and just in time. And robustness. It can compile to native ARM and x86 code, which is great. Of course, aside Dart code, you may want sometimes to create native code for some hardware capabilities and so on. And Flutter has another key feature, which is platform channels, that basically consists just a pipe stream over data, where you create a two-end channel, and you trade message with binary message between those 2 layers, the Flutter layer and the native layer. And there's no wrapping or interpreters at all. You say, call me that method, give me the return in a callback, and you are free to leave the platform for this task. Of course, here you don't need to use the Dart language. You use the native language, that Objective-C in iOS or Java in Android. It supports even Swift and Kotlin. But if you are worried right now that you may have to learn as well the native languages, well, fortunately for all of us, you don't. Typically, a Flutter app can have only Dart source code, and you will mostly likely to extend it by using plugins from the community that can be only Dart as well. But in most scenarios, you want to use a camera, a sensor, Bluetooth, and so on. And you need to use the hardware capabilities, such as these features. And those plugins can include the native language for that and expose it for you, so you are completely abstracted for that. For example, there are also native SDKs, like Firebase, that are already exposed to Flutter with a plugin. And, of course, you can include it directly in your Dart source code. If you want just a small task in native, you are free to do so. You don't need to wrap it in a plugin. We've covered mobile so far, but does Flutter also supports creating other kind of apps for web and desktop? Yeah, as of today, it does. You have mobile, its main features is for mobile, Android and iOS, and the upcoming replacement for Android, which is Fuchsia. And as of today, it supports in a preview way desktop and web. I have here just a quick example. As you can see over here, I have the iPhone emulator running an example app, here the desktop version of the exactly same app, and on the right, the web version. So it's an example app, it's not optimized at all for the desktop and the web, but you can see that it ports very well and works flawlessly, which is really, really amazing. And out of curiosity, it was even possible to make it run in a Raspberry Pi. So what about the tools? Does Flutter comes with an out-of-the-box interface builder? How do I build my apps? Well, in fact, it doesn't, but you won't miss it at all, because another key feature is the auto-reload and auto-restart, where it's more or less a kind of runtime interface builder, where you just type your widgets, you create your widget tree, and you save it, and boom, in less than half of a second, you have the changes on the screen. This prevents some surprises, because sometimes interface builders cannot have the exactly same appearance when the apps are running. Of course, you can use Flutter as well with your favorite environments. The Flutter plugin supports IntelliJ, Android Studio, and VS Code, so you are free to use this. And with this, you can use the debug tools that Flutter offers, such as toggle debugger for painting, performance overlays, slow animations, and one of my favorites, switching between platforms on the fly. This means that when you are building your app, you can toggle between Android and iOS in runtime in the same emulator and see how the app is looking for both platforms. So I will show you this example right now. Over here, I have an iPhone app just running with some random components, widgets in Flutter, with a dialog, for example. And as I'm going here to press the key to change the platform, to toggle the platform, you see that right now I'm using the Cupertine widget style for Android, even if I'm on an iOS emulator, which is only possible due to OpenGL rendering. So when I'm developing, it's very, very useful. It comes in handy to have features like this. So next, we don't want that at all, because we have some time all been through there, and we don't want to be firemen, so Flutter's provided with the hoses for those fires, and they support out of the box for 3 types of tests, the most typical ones: unit testing, interface testing, which is called widget testing, and integration tests. Of course, you are free to use third-party libraries if you want, such as Mockito, but you don't need to. You can use the Flutter drive and start the test immediately as soon as you start developing your app. Last but not least, you can't have a great technology without a great community. And this is true. There are a lot of frameworks that couldn't survive on the market because they hadn't a great community behind or a great company. So as Google as a community, of course, isn't a problem at all. Neither is the community, because there are already a lot of plugins available, high-quality documentation, multiple channels where they are always posting stuff, multiple events. There is even a Flutter Portugal, where I'm part of its organization. You are free to join our meetups if you want. And just to give you a comparison number, the official GitHub repo of Flutter, as of today, has more or less 70K stars, where more or less by this time last year, it had only 20. For comparison, React Native is around 80K, and as of today, more or less, and it is 2 years old than Flutter. So you can see the traction here. And Flutter was only released on December 4th. They even have a cookbook where you can follow recipes for the most typical use cases when you are building a mobile app. Of course, you can't eat what you make with these recipes, of course, but you can gather the widgets together and start making your app from scratch with those. Yeah, OK, sounds good, great. It sounds great today, but won't Google drop it? Well, if you are afraid that Google might drop the technology itself, I don't believe that. And a recent LinkedIn Learning blog posted that Flutter is in the top as the fastest growing skills among software engineers. Also, the Stack Overflow survey of this year put Flutter above Node.js and React Native as the most loved framework. And if you are wondering where you can find Flutter apps, I hope you didn't miss the opening keynote. You should at least have one in your pocket, which is the JNation app, where you can see the schedule, set an alarm for the upcoming talks. You can scan other attendees' QR code to keep the contact for reference and so on. And aside that, of course, I have the pleasure, of course, of making this app in no time just for today. And aside that, you can find Flutter apps in their official showcase, where you find names like Alibaba, which is the biggest online store in China, And they even have an official catalog, it's allwidget.com, where you can find a lot of examples of apps made with Flutter. So I hope that you right now, even if it's 15 minutes, if you are more or less like that, I hope so. And if you are just as thrilled as I expect you to be, and want to start playing with Flutter from scratch, I will leave you with a suggestion, with an Audacity course, the official one from Google and Flutter team. It's free, of course. There are other paid courses, but this one is a very good starting point, and you can start building and playing with art and building your apps from scratch. So, because we don't have much time left, if you have any questions, just come to me after the session, and I'll be very thankful to answer those questions. Thank you for your time.